Hello and welcome back to the Ultimate Guide. I'm Godi from Server 73. This series breaks down immortals and their ultimate skills, so you can see how they actually play out in real fights, how they fit into marches, and where they make sense in the current meta. Today we're looking at Nebuchadnezzar, a holy bowman immortal who sits in the backline and plays more of a support damage role. He isn't here to carry a fight on his own. What he does is make the rest of the march hit harder once the fight is already moving. Nebuchadnezzar works best in physical focused lineups that can keep pressure on the enemy. He's at his best when the march can push troop counts down and stay in control of the fight, rather than trying to win everything in the opening few seconds. If you're looking to recruit Nebuchadnezzar, you can pick up his fragments from Tea's Roulette, Random Shadow Immortal Shards, Sparks of Galaxy and KVK Ancient Redmans. That puts him firmly in the higher investment category. Next we'll move on to mechanics and look at what Paradisos actually does, because that one skill is where all of Nebuchadnezzar's value comes from. Before we look at how Nebuchadnezzar fits into a march, we need to be clear on what his ultimate does. Nebuchadnezzar's ultimate is Paradisos. It has a passive effect that increases his initial energy by 200 points at the start of battle. When Paradisos activates, Nebuchadnezzar deals physical damage to all enemy units. At the same time, Paradisos increases the healing received by all allied units. For enemy targets below 70% troops, Paradisos also increases the physical damage dealt by friendly units for a short duration. With his exclusive artifact equipped, the duration of Paradisos is extended to 12 seconds. Watch the battle replay with me to see Paradisos in action and how it applies its effects during the fight. So, that's everything Paradisos provides. With that in mind, let's move on to immortal pairings and look at where he actually fits. Nebuchadnezzar works best when he isn't being used as the main source of damage. Compared to dedicated carries, his personal output is lower, which makes him a better fit as a secondary immortal supporting someone else who's doing most of the damage. Because of that, the general approach is straightforward. Nebuchadnezzar pairs best with a primary physical damage dealer who can stay active in the fight and benefit from his buffs once enemy troop counts start dropping. Alexander the Great is one example of this kind of pairing, but he isn't the only option. Alexander provides sustained physical damage through normal attacks and attack speed, and he performs best in longer fights where that pressure can build. Nebuchadnezzar can sit behind him, adding extra physical damage and increasing healing received once the fight has progressed. That said, I haven't tested him as much as others and don't have a fixed list of best pairings. Most of his value depends on how well the rest of the march can take advantage of the effects he provides. The main takeaway is that Nebuchadnezzar fits best behind a physical carry that can already function on its own. He isn't there to replace a damage dealer. He's there to support one. Next we'll move on to skill pairings and look at what helps Nebuchadnezzar stay effective in that secondary role. When you're running Nebuchadnezzar as a secondary damage immortal, supportive skills make the most sense. He isn't there to push damage on his own, so the focus is on keeping the march stable and helping the main carry stay active. Because Nebuchadnezzar is a ranged immortal, some of the usual options aren't available to him. Skills like Life Protection, Fountain of Life, No Escape and Source Synergy can be equipped, which narrows the pool quite a bit. That leaves him mainly working with triggered defensive skills and aura skills. Energy Shield is a good one to equip. Every few seconds it has a chance to apply shields to multiple allies, absorbing damage for a short time. It doesn't require positioning or timing, and it helps smooth out incoming pressure while the fight is ongoing. Assist is another option worth considering. It periodically redirects damage from a backline ally onto Nebuchadnezzar while reducing the damage he takes. In setups where you're protecting a primary carry, this can help keep that carry alive without needing Nebuchadnezzar to do anything actively. Aura skills also make sense on him since they apply consistently and don't rely on timing. Berserk is one example, increasing attack speed across the march and providing small amounts of healing through normal attacks. Malice is another option, reducing any crit rate from the start of the fight. Which aura you run depends more on the rest of the march than on Nebuchadnezzar himself. Overall, the goal with Nebuchadnezzar's skills is simple. He doesn't need damage tools. He needs skills that support the march passively and let the main damage dealer do their job. Next, we'll move on to specializations and look at which option makes the most sense for him. Nebuchadnezzar's specialization choice is mostly about where you want his contribution to come from. Since he's being used as a secondary mortal and not as a main damage carry, the option that directly improves his ultimate makes the most sense. Concentration stance is the best fit here. It increases the damage dealt by his ultimate and improves his accuracy after battle starts. Because Nebuchadnezzar's impact comes from parady assist rather than from skill-based physical damage, boosting his ultimate lines up cleanly with how he's being used. Deadly Aim focuses on crit rate and physical damage. That's more useful on immortals who rely heavily on physical skill damage or normal attack output. In Nebuchadnezzar's case, the physical damage increase doesn't add much value compared to strengthening his ultimate. Stellar Rain adds periodic physical damage on a timer. It can contribute extra damage, but it's detached from parady source and doesn't interact with the buffs he provides. As a result, it doesn't really support his role in the march. If you're running Nebuchadnezzar as a secondary immortal focused on his ultimate concentration stance, is the most direct and relevant choice. Next, we'll move on to relevancy and look at where Nebuchadnezzar currently sits in the game. Nebuchadnezzar has never really been a standout immortal, even going back to his release. He's very much a jack of all trades, master of none. He brings a bit of damage, a bit of sustain, and some team utility, but none of it is strong enough to define a march on its own. His damage rate is too low for him to work as a primary damage dealer, which means he almost always has to sit behind someone else who's doing the real work. In a one carry focused meta, that already puts him at a disadvantage, because that secondary slot usually needs to offer something very specific and very impactful. On the support side, his buffs don't really solve a problem. The increased healing isn't enough to function as real sustain, and the damage increase doesn't meaningfully change how fights play out. He ends up sitting in an awkward middle ground where he's helping a little, but not enough to justify the slot. He's also difficult and expensive to build for what he provides. When you compare that investment to other immortals, it's hard to make a case for him. Someone like Quinn, for example, brings serious wounds, which has a much clearer and more immediate impact than everything Nebuchadnezzar's ultimate offers combined. Overall, Nebuchadnezzar feels redundant. He isn't unusable, but he's rarely the best option, and in most marches, he can be replaced without losing much. So that wraps up this episode of the Ultimate Guide. Nebuchadnezzar has never really found a clear place in the game. He does a bit of everything, but not enough of any one thing to stand out. His damage is too low to carry, and his support effects aren't strong enough to replace a dedicated support, which makes him hard to justify in the current one carry meta. If you already have Nebuchadnezzar built, have you actually found a setup where he feels worth the slot? And if you've tested him more than I have, I'd be interested to hear what's worked for you. If this guide helped, make sure you like the video and subscribe for more Ultimate Guide episodes and Infinity Kingdom content. As always, I'm Goti from Server 73, and I'll see you in the next one.